Hi book friends, it's me Michelle back with another video, and today I'm going to be doing a tag that I was tagged to do a couple months ago. What can I say? I procrastinated myself into a corner as usual, and I'm finally getting around to doing it. And the tag I'm talking about is the Would You Rather Thriller Edition. This fun tag was created by my bestie Becky at Book Reviews with Becky. And I was tagged to do this one by Caitlin at Spill the Reads. So thank you, ladies. I will link their channels in the description of this video. And let's get started with these fun questions. Number one, would you rather read a psychological thriller with an unreliable narrator or a mystery with a twisty ending? I love nothing more than an unreliable, unhinged character in a book sometimes. I really loved this book here, which this is Otessa Moshfegh's Death in Her Hands. I don't know, this is not marketed as a thriller per se, but and some people find this book really boring. I love this book, and it had a kind of a slow burn, and it was a really, really intense psychological deep dive into one woman's slow unraveling with a bit of a twisty, surprise ending. So it had kind of the best of both worlds, but if I had to choose, I would for sure pick a psychological thriller over a mystery with a twist ending. I'm okay if there's no twist, as long as it keeps me reading all the way through. So yeah. Number two, would you rather be trapped in a locked room mystery or be part of a cat and mouse chase across a foreign city? So I interpreted this question to mean me, myself, as in Michelle, who is in a locked room mystery with a bunch of characters, like a big Agatha Christie story of some kind, or having me participate in a cat and mouse chase across a foreign city. So with that in mind, I have to pick locked room mystery simply, well, for a couple of reasons. I have no sense of direction, so I would get lost within 5 minutes of trying to run in a foreign city from anything, from my own shadow. Secondly, I love the dynamic between the characters in a locked room mystery and the conversations. And the not knowing who, like in that situation, everybody is suspicious of everyone. So I would love to be like, kind of like in an escape room situation where I had to solve the mystery and deduce who did what. To me, that would be more fun. So I'm going to go trapped in a locked room mystery for that one. Number three, would you rather read a thriller that keeps you on the edge of your seat but has a disappointing ending, or a slower paced thriller with a perfect and satisfying ending? For me personally, I'm the kind of reader who doesn't need to have things all wrapped up in a neat little bow at the end of a story. I'm okay when an author leaves it up to the reader to interpret what happened in the end, or reflect on the events leading up to the ending, even though it may not be the ending you were hoping for. I don't mind that. So yeah, what would I rather if I had to choose one? Yeah, I would choose the thriller that keeps me on the edge of my seat through the entire book, and then, having a slightly disappointing ending. I mean, I also think that whether an ending is disappointing or not is entirely up to me. So like I've read books before where at first I was disappointed in the ending, and then after it sat with me for a few days after, I thought, hey, maybe that ending was perfectly justified. But yeah, I'd pick the thriller that keeps me reading and flipping pages all the way through, even if the ending isn't as strong. Number four. Would you rather uncover a major secret halfway through the book or wait until the last chapter for the big reveal? I recently read a book called Holiday Country by N.C. Attrick. I know I have gone on and on about it, but it's one of my favorite books of the summer. Anyway, there is a big reveal in that book about halfway through, and I love it when a book does that. That's one of my favorite things. Like, you think the story is going one way and then something happens and it takes off in an entirely new direction. So it's almost like you get two books in one. And I love that. Yeah, I think I would prefer almost to have a big reveal halfway through. And then to me, the outcome, the fallout from the big event is just as interesting as the things that led up to the big event. So yeah, for me, it makes for a really entertaining book. So yeah, I would choose that. Number 5, would you rather follow a detective with a dark past or a criminal mastermind who is always one step ahead? I think most of us have things in our past maybe that are a little on the dark side or that we're not proud of. So that's a really kind of a universal theme among human beings. Like, and a detective, although detective work fascinates me, and I love the human part of that kind of a character, I think I would rather follow a criminal mastermind, somebody who's an outlier, who's, you know, a singularity among society, who's very rare, like not that psychopaths are kind of rare, I guess, but yeah, criminal mastermind who's always one step ahead. When I read this, I immediately thought about Dexter Morgan, one of my favorite TV characters. I haven't read the Dexter books, but I would rather follow a criminal mastermind, somebody who is always a step ahead, and someone maybe like Dexter who is hiding in plain sight and leading a high functional, seemingly normal existence, while secretly, yeah, having this, you know, dark secret life. Number 6, would you rather read a thriller set in a remote, isolated location or one set in a bustling city full of hidden dangers? That's an easy one for me to answer. This is probably the easiest question of the bunch. I love nothing more than an isolated location. It just lends that creepiness factor immediately, and that sense of isolation that is so foreboding and atmospheric. I just love that. I just love a thriller in particular, set in a very remote location, a ski lodge in the middle of nowhere, an island, you know, a car breaks down in the middle of the woods in the middle of the night. I love that kind of thing. And, or even more like, even if it's several characters that are all trapped in this remote location. A book I thought of immediately was The Guest List from Lucy Foley. I really love this one. They're on an island at this wedding, and things go south really fast. Let's put it that way. So yeah, isolated location for me all the way. Number 7, would you rather have a main character who is constantly making the wrong decisions but ultimately survives, or a character who makes all the right decisions but still ends up in danger? Yeah, I think, first of all, I think right decision versus wrong decision is entirely subjective. And I like it when, you know, sometimes a seemingly wrong decision turns out to be the right thing to do in the end. But yeah, a main character who's constantly making wrong decisions, but ultimately survives. I love a survivor story. I love people who are able to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds in a story. So I'd have to go with that one. A main character who's constantly making wrong decisions, but ultimately survives. I find it's really inspiring, and yeah, I like reading those kind of people. The only thing I don't like is somebody who's making really stupid decisions. I find that to be very annoying to read in a book. And, you know, a character who makes wrong decisions, I mean, just because those decisions are wrong, they aren't necessarily stupid. So for me, that's a big distinction that makes a difference of whether I enjoy it or not. So yeah, I'd pick that. A character who makes all the right decisions but still ends up in danger. I don't know. I don't know what you could determine as a right decision. Morally right, maybe, I guess. So yeah, I don't know. I find that less interesting than somebody who has, kind of conflicts due to their own decision making. So yeah. Number 8. Would you rather read a book with a villain who has a personal vendetta against the protagonist, or one with a villain who is completely unknown and mysterious? Okay. Yeah. I love reading about a villain who has a vendetta against a protagonist, especially as long as we don't know what that vendetta is. To me, that makes it more interesting. Like, for example, I read a book years ago where the protagonist is a child, a gifted special child, and the villain in this book has a vendetta against him, and we don't know why. And I found that so interesting. The book I'm talking about is The Silence of Bonaventure Arrow by Rita Lagansky. You may have never heard of this book before. It came out, I think, 2012, 2013, something like that. One of the best books I've ever read. It's a murder mystery. It's a family drama. It's a coming of age story. But there is a murder that happens in this book. And like I said, yeah, the villain has a vendetta against this child, and we don't know why. And I found that so interesting to read about. Yeah. On the other hand, a villain with a completely unknown and mysterious villain, that's also really interesting to me. So this is really hard to decide. Yeah. But yeah, I guess maybe I'll go with the villain who is completely unknown and mysterious. I like figuring out a mystery along with the protagonist in the story, so I'm going to go with that one. Number 9, would you rather read a thriller with intricate mind-bending puzzles to solve, or with high intensity action scenes? That depends. If it depends how much the author is demanding of the reader. Like, I don't like to read a book where I have to do a lot of heavy lifting and figuring out what's going on with a mystery that's so intricate and so detailed and loaded up with minutia that it's hard to actually discern what's going on. I don't enjoy reading that kind of a thing, but I do like a good mystery. So yeah, I just don't want to do the heavy lifting myself as a reader. I want to enjoy myself while I'm reading a thriller. So I would go with high intensity action scenes. I think that would be more fun to read rather than a super intricate mind-bending puzzle that I have to try and solve. I want the characters to do that for me. I don't want to have to put any really, really intensive, scrutiny and attention. When I'm reading a thriller, I'm there for a good time, not a long time. So I just want to have a fast-paced kind of a fun read. So yeah. Number 10, would you rather read a thriller with multiple POVs or one that focuses solely on the protagonist's perspective? For this one, am going to go with multiple POVs. I read a thriller last year that wasn't technically an actual thriller, I guess, if we were to place it in a genre. Some people call it a thriller. I'm not sure. It's just a good book. I'm talking about Burnham Road by Eleanor Catton. This one had multiple POVs, and that is what made this story just go along at a fantastic pace. I couldn't wait to read what the other people were doing. I would read one part with this group. We're following a cult in this book, essentially. We're also following a wealthy billionaire. We're also following this couple who are also very well off. And all these 3 different groups of people here are basically after the same thing. And they go to all kinds of unscrupulous lengths and conflicts to get what they're after. Anyhow, reading from the different POVs here just made this a fantastic book. And I think that's the case for me with most books. So I'll always pick a multiple POV. Like I said earlier, though, I do like an unhinged person in a story. So there's that. But being that I have to do, this is a would you rather tag and I have to only pick one, I'd go with the multiple POVs. Next question. Would you rather read a book written in first person or third person point of view? This is really hard. Like I was just saying, I love a third person point of view, but I also love a first person point of view. For this, I'm going to have to go with a first person narration. If I had to choose between the two, yeah, I do really enjoy that. My best case scenario is when a book uses both and goes back and forth, as in a book called The Specimen by Jamie Fixon that I was raving about here on my channel and continue to talk about. It's one of my favorite reads of 2025 so far. And yeah, so I'm going to have to, if I had to pick one or the other, I'll pick first person, but ultimately I love it when they use both. And so that brings us to the end of this tag. Since this tag has been kind of circulating around for a while now, I don't think I'll tag people this time just because, yeah, most of the people that I would tag have probably already done this one. So if you're watching this and you'd like to participate, please feel free to do so. I like to hear your answers and see what you would choose. Would you rather this one or would you rather that? Thriller edition. Thank you, Becky, and thank you, Caitlin, and thanks to everybody who watched this. See you in the next video. Bye for now.